welcome to The Smartest Moron, where I don't care if this jacket's too small for me, I still frickin' love it.
I have a bit of a love-disappointment relationship with this particular title. There are definitely improvements with the special edition, but nothing to the story. Too much to ask, I guess, at least from Capcom. Just look at Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite for crying out loud. But you are probably wondering what is the problem with this particular game. I mean, after Game 3, things should have been smooth sailing, right? Well, from what I gather from other reviewers and my own research, the game was rushed ahead of schedule by Capcom, so the dev team didn't have enough time to refine the story how they wanted it to be. And were worried that Nero wouldn't be as well received as Dante, so he ended up hogging most of the spotlight. I imagine those worries were only amplified given the state of the game. It's a shame too, because when I first saw the trailers, seeing a presumably evil Dante, I wanted this game like no other, even buying a used Xbox 360. That eventually got red ring because I stupidly used a cooling fan that made things worse. I had yet to master Google. For shame. Unfortunately, the plot wasn't the only thing that got hit to it. The gameplay did as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, I could still have a good time no matter who I'm playing as. The special edition even adds Virgil, Trish, and Lady for some more fun, and they all bring something interesting to the table. Sadly, the backtracking kinda kills things. Certain boss fights are really too difficult, and one in particular is just the worst, and you could see the potential draining from this entry. It was fun, but not phenomenal like it could have been. With all that said, let's dive into the plot. The story... honestly, it crumbles apart for me in the first few moments. See, it's in Fortuna, a fictional city where they worship Sparta, and our protagonist is named Nero, who is partially a demon due to how his arm works, so he struggles to hide it.
And any common sense / interest I had in this plot immediately died. Would you like to know why? It's because they worship a demon!
Yes, the game demonstrates that they also deal with demons that attack them, but if someone like Sparta is able to control himself despite being a full demon, why would they doubt Nero's ability to control himself? Not to mention, Nero's been living with these people already, specifically Credo, who leads the Knights of Fortuna. If he hadn't gone berserk already from spending so much time near those two, I think others can put 2 and 2 together that Nero isn't so dangerous. Now there was another idea to make Nero a detective, so he'd be a bit more witty. As much as I would love to see that kind of character, I can see that idea being squandered. I mean, let's face it, the plot barely stretches out his own character here. The story can easily be summed up as your standard tale of, young man has dark power, tries to hide fear of rejection from his girlfriend, but eventually masters it in order to beat the bad guy. There is really nothing more complicated than that in this plot, and because of that, it's hardly interesting, even lacking things I could read into like I did with Devil May Cry 3. Now with that said, the idea of Fortuna being a place where people openly worship Sparta is an interesting one. Hell, if they ever get the idea for a Sparta game, I can see characters being used from this game when they are younger, picking up a book, and you could play as Sparta in various points of his history. It would be a neat idea for just a bunch of random missions or cutscenes with the guy. Maybe something similar to how Valkyria Chronicles handled its menu approach. Capcom, I'm giving you free ideas here. Or we could even have more world building in general. Angels are something characters like Credo say that they are once transformed, but they never really go in depth with the idea or how angelic characters truly act. Given how these armors are used, they're just basically magical demon robots, there's nothing I can really understand about angels. There are some elements borrowed from Neo Angelo's design and name, but that's about it. If anything, I would have loved to see this place occupied with demons who didn't want to just cause mayhem, and see how that plays out before the chaos starts. There are many ways to handle this, but the rushed writing squanders any potential the plot had.
Gee, it's almost like rushing out your games is a bad idea, Capcom.
Also, the game has sudden urge to make its characters sexier. This actually does kind of fit the time period since I do remember Dead or Alive coming out with the insane boob jiggles. Kyrie is thankfully spared from this, but sadly Lady isn't. It's a shame because she was my favorite character that came out of Game 3, if not my all-time favorite due to how interesting her development with Dante was. Now she's just reduced to eye candy. I get that she is more loose with her attitude now, which is a tremendous positive, and not having her being a growly angry bitch like say Lightning. But they had no reason to do this as it doesn't suit her that well, and I should probably just shut up about this because I can't stop staring. I said move on! There is technically a novel to help expand on a few things. Some things work, other things, well, they contradict the game, and will I be looking at that? No. Here's the thing, you don't need to read the manga of Devil May Cry 3 to understand the game as a whole. Hell, the same thing goes with the comic prequel, barring maybe one plot element to help a certain scene make a lot more sense.
Although not by much, and actually ruins 2 characters. And even then, I hated those characters anyway, so they just made it worse.
My point is that they had enough time to create 3 new characters to play with, especially since Virgil has new attacks that make him more different to play than his Game 3 counterpart, then they should have had enough time to fix this story and add something new. Not to mention that the novel, yeah, it isn't in English. So much like with Final Fantasy 13-2 and Final Fantasy 15, I have to repeat this. If your story requires outside learning material, then make it in the languages the game is available in, or you have completely failed as a storyteller. A game should not require this in the first place, but if it's in a language I can understand and not rely on translations, one could at least argue the material is readily available for consumption. Despite some good gameplay, Nero's personality isn't perfect, but not god-awful either. He does have some familiar traits to Dante to help ease you into the character, but there are differences that the game thankfully is able to bring out. One is his aversion to people. He isn't a very sociable person. Gee, no wonder I relate to this guy. He was only able to tolerate being in a church because of his girlfriend singing, and he wanted to give her a gift. Though he's also a bit shy, kinda like a tsundere in a way given how he looks away from her. Same goes for Gloria as well, trying not to stare too hard at her assets.
What was I talking about? Oh, right. Gloria for Senra and Kagura. I think she'll make a perfect fit.
There is one problem with the gameplay, specifically Nero with his upgrades. The abilities he has at the start of the game and snatching people up to him are already good enough for the player, but you never really gain much else to add to his arsenal beyond the Devil Trigger. Some abilities are plot related, like getting rid of some binds, and then you have the shield ability, which is a thing, kind of boring really. That said, the gameplay is still the best part about him. I was reminded why I loved him so much when fighting these Super Knights. What reaction can I get out of them with the Devil Bringer? His most defining trait, though, is his short temper. Now, in situations where he has a degree of control, he can freely joke about. Not really caring about the supposed death of Sanctus is one such example, where he jokes about the situation. But he knows when to get serious, even losing control of himself in some cases, and unable to think straight. We have a few examples, like the merciless beatdown Dante lets him get away with, or really any beatdown he gives to any demon, even to Credo, who was like a brother to him. Though in Nero's defense, Credo was an utter asshole in that point, there are differences between how he carries himself compared to other members of the Order, but the game never really explores that or even his past. Unfortunately, Nero's problems are much easier to see when you look at his supporting cast, especially with Kyrie. She isn't so god-awful in ways where I want to see her pounded into the dirt like Reboot Virgil, thank god, but she lacks anything to really make her memorable beyond Nero shouting her name again and again, to the point where you can make a damn drinking game of it. Unlike other female characters within the series, excluding Patty since she was just a kid, she has no combative role, and is also the typical damsel in distress. Adding on to our list of tropes is, she's the light needed for the male character to not turn evil or to have hope or something. She's the Black Widow to his Hulk, basically. Just take away everything cool about Black Widow. Now think back to the review of Shadow Hearts and the other protagonist, Alice. While Yuri did have to guard her and she was initially afraid of the man who could turn into the devil, she did eventually get to see Yuri for who he was, could defend herself when she really needed to, and despite being kidnapped or in situations where she was powerless, she eventually proved she was more than capable of stepping up to the plate. For example, when Yuri tried to take control of a powerful demon to save many people, but the fusion drove him insane, leading Alice to lead the team to try and find a way to save him. Aside from being much more active in combat, she also delved into his mind and was willing to be a sacrifice for the mask in order to help save Yuri from his own curse. And even when it was time for the mask to take her life, she did not go down quietly, even if the battle was fruitless during the bad ending. In fact, the bad ending shows that ultimate resolve, because she was fighting to save the world and didn't want to tell Yuri anything in the fear that he would stop fighting for her sake. Alice was far more than just some damsel in distress or love interest. She was a determined exorcist who understood the meaning of sacrifice. She wasn't the strongest by any means, but she was a healer who wasn't afraid to kick ass when the situation calls for it. Kyrie, by contrast, yeah, I can't think of anything else to her. Just because she's cute and loves Nero wasn't a strong enough reason for me to get motivated. And since they are tied together with barely any backstory given at all, I feel even less inclined to care.
Although that hasn't stopped porn of her from recently coming out. Don't ask how I know that.
The only reason I don't hate her is that she does have good support with Nero, and that I don't mind the two hooking up, and they have a good reason to. It's just not really all that interesting given what I've been pointing out all this time. But at least she isn't acting bitchy like certain other characters. You know the one. But let this be a lesson that love interests should be their own character first, before being a supportive girlfriend. That said, I also hope the character doesn't die as motivation for Nero in Devil May Cry 5. We do not need extra angst for Nero through a tired trope. even her reason for being kidnapped is weak. Just to be part of the core of this giant thing, and that's it. I remind you, she cannot transform into a demon, has nothing to do with demons beyond worshipping Sparta, so it just begs the question as to why she is taken in the first place. You could say the villains were trying to bait Nero, but he was already hunting them down anyway. The only time it comes in handy was when Nero nearly defeated Sanctus. They use Kyrie as a shield, and he fails in his attack. Credo is also not better off either. Since we barely know of Sanctus, the main villain, it's hard for me to truly understand Credo's own motivations. Throughout the entire time before leading up to the boss encounter, he's purely concerned about two things: protecting citizens, and then protecting Sanctus from another attack by Dante. No flashbacks or anything of the sort to help flesh out his personality. Even when it's possible for Nero to discover the laboratory of Agnes, he shows no concern about Nero learning the truth, rather than explain it to him to possibly make things easier. Agnes had every right to be upset about this, and this only makes Credo look bad since not only does Nero now know what kind of shady stuff they're up to, but he could have potentially let Nero die as well. He's a great boss fight though, probably one of the best in this game, so that counts for something. Even if I can't catch that spear to save my life, literally. But that's sadly it, he fails as a rival character for Nero. Compare that to Dante and Virgil's conflict center around their own family, with a lot of stuff you could read into with regarding their words and actions. So when Credo kicks the bucket, I feel nothing whatsoever. Agnes had quirks and was a bit entertaining, and that's about it. He gave some decent comedy with Dante, as well as a good lesson after the fight in one of my favorite scenes in the series, but that's sadly about it for the guy. Nothing else to him beyond experiments and listening to Sanctus. And Sanctus falls into the same boat as well, not being too interesting, just interested in world domination by trying to get people to see that he and his demon armors are actually angels, saviors to mankind in Sparta's place. While Arkham was kinda one note, at least he did have major conflict with the characters, and perfectly manipulated them so he could end up on top, as well as provide the Sparta brothers one of their best moments in the game, teaming up despite their differences and how often they cut each other up. Sanctus is just boring as a character. There was no real manipulation beyond kidnapping Kyrie to lure Nero in. That's it aside from the gameplay, and his giant fight is freaking awful. Thank God Bayonetta will come in later to fix these battles. The other bosses are okay for the most part, but the fact that they repeat so much bothers me. Plus their dialogue with Nero is extremely weak, unable to bring out the best in the character, and making him look a bit bland as a result. So that leaves us with Gloria, who aside from some pointless fan service, was just Trish as his disguise, not even offering a boss fight. That at least would have been cool to see, like maybe an optional boss fight like with Jester. Also, is she wearing any underwear?
Now you might be wondering why we don't have Heihachi's ass proudly displayed over here given all the fan service. Well, you see, there are a few reasons for that. One is that I no longer care about YouTube's policies, they can go fuck themselves after what they did to my channel. And two, Heihachi's dead. And I really don't support necrophilia. Also, the game's been out for over a year, so I'm free to spoil that however I please.
The only positive thing I can say about this is that it does show the DMC team that their plans do involve more beyond shooting up the place. Sadly, this does mean Trish doesn't really do much on camera, and even Sanctus found out about the betrayal. All Trish did was hand him the weapon he needed to raise hell in the first place, so smooth move there. I'm sure this has no consequences. Oh. Wait. The sad part is, Lady actually points this out at the end of the game in the secret ending. And that honestly makes Sanctus a worse character because someone had to be crazy enough to give him the Sparta Devil Arm in the first place for him to become a threat. Hell, it makes all the villains look bad because from Dante's perspective, these guys are not even in the same league as Arkham, let alone Mundus. And since Lady, Trish, and Virgil don't do much even in the special edition, there's only one character left to look at: Dante. Much like the others, he too lacks development and hulks some screen time away from the others. But he does bring something almost as important to the table: entertainment. His interactions with the bosses are vastly more interesting and funny to watch compared to the battles with Nero, and show off his cockiness and charm on a level never seen before. For God's sake, he and Agnes do some kind of play together. There are some who say he acts too much like a cartoon character, and he kinda is at some points. But keep in mind, Deadpool does the exact same thing and has some storylines where you are meant to take him seriously in comics. The difference between the two, though, is that Dante can actually win his fights without losing in dumb ways, or being shot up 1,000 times. But the most important thing, it shows how much different he wants to be compared to his father. While he has almost no qualms about upholding his name or being called the son of Sparta, I say almost considering how he reacts to Credo's words, doing actions like making fun of the demons make him far more memorable in the eyes of others. He doesn't want to be known as just some son of a legend forever. He wants to be known as Dante, a crazy half-breed who will make fun of his foes while cutting them to ribbons. And while sometimes his cocky nature can get the better of him, he will always rise back up and win the day. no matter who he ends up fighting. And despite him hogging the screen during the latter half, it should be noted that DMC3, by the time the twist happens, the story was able to establish every character with a personality. So when things were shaken up, it meant something. So it's not completely Dante's fault that Nero didn't get much more development. They had plenty of time, over half a game, to establish these other characters, and wasted it. That said, making sure the two had their own story modes would have vastly improved things. Also, I was not the biggest fan of the Dante boss fight. Then again, I didn't really practice when recording this footage.
And you can tell from the tone, the boss fight nearly broke my frigging hands. It's God Eater all over again.
And that's sadly all I can really analyze from DMC4. There would have been more, but Capcom just had to rush out this game, leading to the eventual reboot that bombed, yada yada. You don't need me to say anything else about the story to see the issues. But despite the problem, I still had fun with the combat system and Dante's silly antics, and here's hoping DMC5 will deliver something so good it will have been worth the wait of 10 years. Has it really been 10 years? I don't... Let me fact check this. Oh my god, it has been 10 years. Hell, by the time the game releases, probably it will have been 11 years. Capcom, in the wise words of Barrett from Final Fantasy VII Machine Abridged, don't fuck up.
I'm the smartest moron, and next time we're going to cover a video game that's actually been requested by a friend of mine, and I really want to cover because it's so damn interesting. Where next time we dive into the digital world. No, not a Digimon game. This is an online MMO. No, not that one either. Definitely not that one either. You cannot pay me to cover Sword Art Online. It's the digital world known as the World. We're covering the .hack GU series. Until next time.
Hello everybody! Do you enjoy The Smartest Moron, but also wish there was a channel like it that talked not just about video games, but also about tabletop games, and a little bit about comics and movies, and had slightly lower production values, and was just generally weirder and less focused? Well, great news! That exists! So why not check out Thrifty Gaming on YouTube? That's THRIFT space the letter E space GAMING. We've got Warhammer 40k, Pathfinder, Ace Attorney, The Third Birthday, webcomics, Warhammer 40k again. And with time, we'll have much more. So yeah, check it out, and subscribe, if you like it. Thank you and have a great day.